Griff is one of the best brawlers, if not the best brawler in the game right now, with the release of his Hypercharge. However, it wasn't always this way, far from it actually. In this video, we'll take a look at Griff, his mechanics and his gameplay, as well as the topic of balance sensitivity and how it relates to Griff and his presence in a seemingly large niche. If you want a chance to win Monster Miko or simply just have fun and a place to talk, join our Discord server. Link will be in the description. Also, make sure you subscribe to keep up with the PowerPoints. Let's start out by looking at Griff's stats. Griff has a slightly above average health of 6800, a normal movement speed, and a pretty good range of 8.33 tiles. However, his damage is what really makes him stand out. Griff fires out 3 waves of 3 coins in a cone shape, with each coin dealing 560 damage. This means that if he hits every single coin, he can deal a crazy 5040 damage, which can kill a Frank with 3 ammo. Oh, you thought that was a lot of damage? Well, meet Griff's super, strong enough to resist the IRS. Griff's super sees him throw 5 piercing banknotes that travel forward and then return to him after 1 second, similar to Carl's attack. The banknotes actually work in an interesting way. They have a maximum damage of 1440 damage, which they deal for the first 20% of the range of the main attack. However, after that, it resets back to 720, and then goes back up to 1440 damage, dealing more damage with more range. If you hit an enemy right on top of you with every single banknote, and then every banknote on the way back, you will deal an absolutely insane 14,400 damage. The way Griff's super and main attack lends him to is a sort of specific niche, generalist with a major in tank countering. But what does this mean exactly? Well, if you don't know already, a generalist is a brawler that is often picked as an early pick, such as a first pick, and is generally good in most situations. This fits with Griff, as he's generally very solid in a lot of situations, and the only weakness you can really give to him is against marksmen on open maps. And even then, his range isn't the worst, with a range of 8.33 tiles for his main attack, and a range of 9 tiles for his super. Furthermore, his super dealing more damage at a long range than at a mid range definitely helps out even more against marksmen, though you generally don't want to pick Griff in open maps. Now, the tank countering. If you couldn't tell already, Griff does an absolutely obscene amount of damage at close range. His damage does become more inconsistent at longer ranges, but it's extremely consistent and deadly at a very short range. Coincidentally, tanks do best at a very short range, but they have a lot of health to survive, right? Well, the great thing about Griff's super is that it has a lot of chaining capability. Hitting one banknote can give anywhere from 8% to 16% supercharge, and there are a total of 10 possible banknote hits. This means, at least at a short range, that more often than not, he can get a second super after the first, which will basically guarantee the death of the tank no matter what. Overall, you can just see how much damage potential Griff really has. Because of this damage potential, and Griff overall being a brawler that is based on pure damage, I think we can safely conclude that Griff is quite reliant on how much damage he deals to enemies. It's the only thing that makes him truly stand out, so he relies heavily on it. Therefore, we can say that he is extremely sensitive to balance changes to his damage. But what does this mean exactly? This means that any damage nerf or buff, however insignificant they may seem, can cause a huge impact on Griff's place in the meta. Let's take for example Griff's balance change on February 27th, which is coincidentally my birthday. He received a small increase in damage, from 260 to 280 damage per coin. Nothing too special, right? Wrong. Before this change, Griff was getting absolutely outclassed, and since he's a part of a big niche, which I'll touch on more later, there was simply a lot of better picks than him. Until this change. This one change boosted him all the way to an A tier brawler from a C tier brawler. This really shows how much sensitivity Griff has to a balance change in damage, as it's a make or break for him when it comes to his place in the meta. But to put this into perspective, let's take a look at another brawler with a low balance sensitivity. Pam has one of the lowest balance sensitivities in the game. For example, her main attack damage was increased not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, okay I'll stop, it was an insane 7 times, with one crazy stretch of 4 straight updates of a damage increase. But what was the reason for all of this? Well, it's simple. Her balance sensitivity for attack damage is extremely low. One change in Griff's attack damage is enough to shoot him up or down multiple tiers in the meta, but one change in Pam's attack damage isn't enough to budge her anywhere, though that may be for reasons beyond balance changes. This is because, unlike Griff, Pam simply does not rely on damage dealing. But there's a less obvious reason than that. Think about it. Most of the time, buffs to certain aspects of Pam don't really move her that much in the meta, unless it's significant multiple changes at once. But why is this? This is because Pam has a diversified kit. She doesn't rely on one singular thing. She has a bit of reliance on her attack damage, a bit of reliance on the healing from her turret, a bit of reliance on her health, and so on and so forth. This makes it so that she's relatively insensitive to singular balance changes, and it takes either shifts in the meta or major shifts in multiple of her stats to really move her. But if we think about Griff, he doesn't really rely on his health nor his range. I mean, these aren't completely useless for him, but he simply relies so much more on the damage he deals than his other stats, so his balance sensitivity for damage is relatively high. But something else makes his balance sensitivity so high, and that's his presence in a large niche. I know I've already classified him earlier, but he also fits into a much bigger niche. I touched on this topic a lot in my last PowerPoint about Lola, so you should definitely check that one out after this one. But anyway, for a short summary, I defined this niche as a multi-projectile, semi-long range brawlers who are mostly classified as damage dealers. Brawlers in this class could include Colt, Lola, Rico, 8-Bit, Eve, Pearl, Otis, and Crow, among other brawlers. We can already see that it's quite the big class, so naturally, there's gonna be a large amount of competition. Picture the Colosseum with a bunch of gladiators in it, with one sign of weakness spelling a person's doom. This niche's competition was basically even worse than that. One nerf and the rest of the brawlers would snap up your spot, and there would be basically no reason to pick you over them. So how does this apply to Griff and balance sensitivity exactly? Well, I've already established that Griff relies a lot on his damage, and any change in his damage will cause a big shift in his relevance in the meta. But this is compounded by the fact that he's in a large niche, so a shift in his damage will cause him to rise above the others in his niche, or be even more forgotten and unplayed than ever, simply due to how many better alternatives there are if his damage ever gets nerfed. And this is part of what happened when he got his damage buff last year. Yes, he relies on damage a lot, and a buff in his damage will increase his meta relevancy, but it was also helpful in breaking the deadlock so often seen within his particular niche. Suddenly, he became much more usable and powerful, and there was no longer as big of a reason to pick someone else from Griff's niche when Griff was available and strong. These two things in part caused Griff to be uniquely sensitive to balance changes to his damage. But what would happen when something like a broken Hypercharge was given to Griff? Before we get to that, let's talk about the rest of Griff's unlockables. Griff's first gadget is Piggy Bank. This sees him drop a piggy bank that explodes after 2.5 seconds, dealing 1400 damage and knocking enemies back. But most importantly, it destroys obstacles in a 2.67 tile radius. This is one of the best gadgets in the game simply because of its ability to shape the map. This is also especially good in maps where Griff is also good on, which are closed maps due to the abundance of tanks. He can open up the map and make sure the tanks see Griff's face clearly before Griff annihilates them. His next gadget is Coin Shower. Coin Shower sees his next coin toss shoot 33% more coins, which is basically him shooting 4 waves instead of 3. This is solid in a few situations, like in Heist against the Heist Safe, but generally the other gadget is just much better. Now, his star powers. His first star power is Keep the Change, which sees his unload speed increase by 25%. This is a pretty solid star power and allows Griff's damage potential to increase even further. And just like Coin Shower, it's very solid in Heist. His other star power is Business Resilience, which sees Griff heal 15% of his missing health every 2 seconds. This is a pretty important star power for him, as it allows him to not worry about healing and stopping his attacks, as he automatically gets health back from this star power. This both helps with his survivability, but more importantly, it also helps with his damage output. Interestingly, if you have his shield gear equipped, the total HP you have is increased, so you will automatically heal more every single turn. So you should definitely have that equipped if you want to run Business Resilience. And now his Hypercharge. Griff's Hypercharge is Tax Rebate, which sees Griff's super pass through walls now, and after a 1-second delay, another wave of 5 banknotes will return to him, also passing through walls. You saw how much of an impact a small increase to his damage had, but a broken Hypercharge? Instantly S tier. The Hypercharge gave him basically a free kill on whoever he used it against, along with an insane team-wide potential, and of course, the ability to catch enemies off guard with the ability to go through walls. All of this, and basically everything else I've said in this video, combined to make Griff such a menace currently, picked much more often over his counterparts in his niche. Overall, Griff's relationship with balancing is one of the most interesting in the game. Unlike other brawlers like Pam, he's extremely sensitive to balance changes, especially changes to his damage due to his reliance on it. Furthermore, his presence in a large niche causes him to be even more sensitive to balance changes, as one small nerf can cause the other brawlers of his niche to snap up his position. All of this culminated with the release of his Hypercharge, and since it was so broken, it allowed Griff to leapfrog the other brawlers of his niche and become one of the best brawlers in the game right now. Thanks to Narcissist and New Glance for helping out with this video. But anyway, thanks for watching. Watch this video, or this playlist, or join the Discord server.